Good morning. I just came in from pulling weeds in the garden. So I'm letting go of my vanity if my hair doesn't look good, if my makeup doesn't look good. I'm sorry to present myself in this way, but I think it's more important to expose what's been coming up in my thought life. I recently recognized that I am a control freak too. I say too because all my life I have been announcing to the world around me that my mother was a control freak, my husbands were control freaks, and my boss was control freak. And I was looking at them and seeing me. I didn't know this. I'm 73 years old. I didn't realize I'm a control freak too. So because I do a lot of self-introspection and I'm always analyzing myself because I do want to improve and get better, but it's kind of late in the date of the age that I am. But since the internet has this opening that people can talk on videos, I'm going to give you the thought lives that I had today while I was weeding in the garden. So I believe there are symptoms of a person who is a control freak. So these are my symptoms. I was very hurt in life as far as not getting support from other people. When I was very, very little, there were things that happened in my family life that were not, there wasn't any support. I became very alone on the inside of myself. And I began a very alone life. And I think at that time, the movement around me wasn't so important as the words that people were saying to me and the tone of voice that people were using. So it scared me with the loud voices in my family from my mother and my father. It scared me. So I retreated inside of myself. And then I would go to school and be very happy and friendly to my classmates. And I began to be like in a double life of carrying on a social way of being. And then I would go home and the turmoil would start all over again. So, you're a little child, you want to run away, but you can't run away because you don't have the ways and the means. Where would you live? Who would buy you food? Who would pay for the roof over your head? It's a lot of things, so you just carry on. You go through school, and then as you get older, though, you form judgments of other people. So, as a Christian, becoming a Christian in 1976, I had like 3 or 4 years of being very zealous and happy, and a lot of miracles were happening to me right then in the beginning of my walk with the Lord. And He took away a lot of big things that were in my life, like, the big sins of, you stop smoking cigarettes, you stop drinking alcohol, you stop going out to party. These are big deal things for the people like me, because I was a child of the 60s and a hippie girl. And there was a lot going on in those years, free love and smoking marijuana and going to parties and trying what was there. And, it just, it fit for me. It fit into my life of rebelling against my parents and getting out on my own. So I was on my own. I had a few apartments that I had to pay for with a job, a few jobs, but then, I always had this deep inner need to be a mom. I always wanted to be a mom and have babies. And my first husband didn't want to have babies, but I was crazy in love because he was my high school sweetheart. So the behavior of his behavior towards me and towards the marriage was that he was pushing me all the time to be self-sufficient, very independent, not to rely on him for anything. So he trained me in that way. But my fantasy of being in love overrode the feelings that I had back then. But that was sort of the beginning of independence. So when I was a child, I was afraid of the parents and the authority figures, and I was very alone in my isolation on the inside. And then getting married, I thought that I would be the Betty Crocker, Donna Reed personality, take care of the garden, take care of the house, decorate everything with homemade decorations, and decorate my kitchen with homemade decorations, and make the best dinners, and learn how to cook gourmet meals, and budget with only $10 a week because my first husband was very cheap. I was doing everything, pay the bills with my little salary of $55 a week, run a household that we were renting. Our rent was $75 a month. And I did it all. And for a while I had a vehicle and of my own, and it was an old 57 Olds. And then it finally gave out, broke down, because my marriage began in 1969, so this was a junker car. So the reason I'm telling you that is I ended up walking. So my husband had his car, he was going to college, and I was giving him spending money out of my $55 paycheck a week. I don't know how I did it. And $10 had to cover the food for the week, and the toilet paper, and the paper towels, and the garbage bags. So when somebody is trained to be on their own, and the people around them are giving them the messages like, I'm not going to help you, I won't help you do anything. So you begin a life of independence, but you begin to rely on yourself. And then the hurt that starts out this, I think the control freak, the root of the control freak personality starts out when you are so hurt, when you realize there's a day when you are independent, you're doing everything, but then you need help. So then finally you do reach out to the people around you and ask for help, and they won't do it. They won't give you help. So then you fall back on your own self again, and you say, oh, I'll figure this out. So, but while you're figuring it out, you're actually doing life. You're doing the things that you didn't get help with. And while you're doing these things, you look on the outside like you're very efficient. You look like you're a multitasker. You look like you're a genius of coping with chores and home life and jobs. You look like that on the outside. It appears that way because you've developed this courage to do it all yourself. So, but during that time, it's like you're this beautiful plant in the garden, but the weeds are growing around you. There's so many weeds. And in the Bible, it talks about if you have a bitter root, it will grow up to become a bitter tree. And there are teachings out there that I didn't discover this on my own. It was taught to me in a book. It's called The Bitter Root Judgment. So the word judgment is very important for you to remember with this what I'm going to explain to you. So you have the bitter root because you are hurt in the first place, that you took down the mountain, you climbed the hill, you did everything you could do in your isolated independence, but there is something you can't finish. So you ask for help with the people around you. Who are you going to go to? You go to your mother, your brother, your sister, your father, and then when you're married, you go to your husband. And each one of them says, no, I will not help you. No, I will not help you. So this bitter root judgment, the judgment starts like a bunch of sentences. You look at them, those people, and in your heart and in your mind and in your thought life, you're calling them names. And then you're saying things in your thought life. How dare you not do things for me when I did all this for you? And now that I'm saying this out loud, I remember my mother saying it out loud. How dare you say no to me when I've done all these things for you? So not to blame my mother totally, but this is my heritage. This is what happened. I lived with a woman that was very hurt and sensitive, but as I looked on at her life, I realized that she was a control freak. And the reason she was a control freak, now I understand it, because it happened to me. You just you believe, or you behave like there's nobody else there, and you start this behavior that if somebody is there, you're not going to wait for them to tell you to sit down or behave a certain way. You're going to do what you want to do, and you're going to tell them to behave a certain way. So last night I was helping somebody, an older lady, and she wanted me to finish the job that she had started, because her fingers didn't work well. So she wanted me to just finish chopping some lettuce on a plate for her dinner, and all I had to do was chop the lettuce, and that's fine. I didn't mind doing that. But when I walked in the room with her in the kitchen, very small kitchen, there was no space for me to operate. I wanted to reach over, and it was a very minor thing. These are minor details, but when you're learning about yourself, you notice things. All I wanted to do was have the room and the space to walk from 3 feet away to the table, and she wouldn't move. She wouldn't move. She wouldn't let me come into the space to do the task that she needed me to do. So instead of understanding it last night, I couldn't understand it. So in the moment, I have to get a cough drop. She even had her hands on the plate, like she was, and she had put cellophane on the plate. Now I'm going to tell you all these little picky things, because I never recognize stuff about myself until I see something. So she was It was like she was holding on to the cellophane and the plate. And I was actually there to be the helper, to help her. But she wouldn't let me help her. So her hands were on top of the cellophane that she had covered over this lettuce. So I reached over and I touched her hands. And she has a hearing problem. So instead of just being able to talk to her in a normal voice and say, you sit down. Or I could have said, could you please sit down, dear? But that's not inside of me to say that. And I was annoyed that in this moment that I was trying to be the person to help her. But she wouldn't let me. It was a freaky thing because it was magnified for me, but it was only happening for a split second, that I was actually there to help her in her time of need for this little task that she couldn't fulfill the rest of it. She did half of it, but she couldn't finish the rest of it. But I was there to do it for her. And in that moment, I spoke to her in a rough manner, but I didn't realize I was doing that. And also to compensate for the lack of her hearing, she couldn't hear. So I said, you sit down. And I touched her hands. I said, and for me to explain in that second, I'll take the cellophane off, you sit down, I'll take it off, I'll take care of it. But this was lost. These sentences were lost because her ability to do what she always did was impaired by this last little part that she couldn't do. And she didn't believe. I'm saying this lady was a control freak too. And she had her independence flag flying high. But she was always doing things independent. So in that moment of this isolated split-second thing, I became the control freak. I said, you sit down. But I touched her hands and magnified my loudness because she can't hear. But you know what she did? She stood right there. She didn't move. So then I had to retreat back and wait. So she stood there and she was peeling off the cellophane. Her feet didn't move. She wasn't going to sit down. She heard me. So I had to recognize in that split second, it didn't matter what I said to her. So I had to wait till she did the whole thing. She took the time with the fingers that weren't supposed to be operating right. She peeled back the cellophane. And as she was doing it, she was saying, I will use this again later on the next plate. So I'm retreated already. I retreated back. I gave up. I'm standing to the side in the kitchen. I'm just watching her do this thing that she asked me to help with. So, on my behalf, to defend myself a little bit, I know what it's like to not have people help me. I know what it's like to ask for help and nobody wants to do it. So I kind of have a part of me that wants to do it. I want to do it for people that can't do it. I really want to. I have a desire to make up for the things that were not done right. Making up for something that wasn't done right. So even though I have that desire to do that for her, I also have the desire for her to get out of my way. If she wants me to do it, she asked me to do it, I'm very happy to fulfill that part of her little task. I'm delighted. I want to help her. Then get out of the way. Move over. Move your feet 10 inches to the side. Move your body over. Sit down so that I can get into that space, for myself to have space to do the thing that I'm able to do, to fulfill for her the need that she had. But it didn't happen. So I had to wait, and I'm back, in the middle of the kitchen just waiting. And I really wasn't thinking of anything. I don't believe at that point I was judging her. I don't believe that. I think in the moments it was just so bizarre for me to watch this and realize that even though I did offer, and even though I was happy to do it, and even though I was there 10 inches away from her, she couldn't let go. She just couldn't let go. So I'm done with that story. So this morning, before I did this video, I was out in my garden. And it had rained a lot of days in a row, so I had a good day to dig up weeds. But I was using the shovel for the ones that were stuck. And the grass is the worst. The grass just somehow it latches on to that underneath part. It goes down deep and it gets twisted in the dirt and grabs on. And grass is really hard to pull out. And weeds are easy to pull out. And, it's like a metaphor, because a bitter root starts when you're a young person, very little. When the bitter tree starts to grow through your lifetime. Because it's a repeat. It's a repeat of the hurt. It's a repeat of what other people are doing around you. It's a repeat of how people react to you. It's a repeat of how you react to other people. It's just a repeat. So the repeats are the weeds that are on the side. And I'm talking about a bitter tree, so I guess it wouldn't be a weed. It would be a branch or a root. I don't know now. The metaphor is getting kind of flubbed up. But I want you to know that I believe in change for myself. I believe in asking God for help to change my character, to be a better person along the way. But he doesn't just change me like that. He puts me through these little intricate parts of my day. And the judgment part is seeing with my eyes of the other people, of how they behave. That's a judgment. So if you have a judgment on somebody, that's the scripture says, I can't think of it. Every time I try to explain this, it's hard. Judge not lest you be judged. Okay, there it is. Judge not lest you be judged. Okay, so back to me. If I defend myself, I've been defending myself lately in different situations. So people are judging me for being a control freak, because I judged people in my past that they were all control freaks. So now people are judging me that I'm a control freak. So judge not lest you be judged. And then the other scripture is, you will reap what you sow. So I sowed the judgment when I was little, and everybody around me was a control freak. I was like pointing my finger at the world. I'm in my cave of my being sensitive and afraid of the yelling and afraid of the screaming, and I'm in my little cave. But in my cave, I'm pointing the finger out to the whole world, and I'm judging them. So now in my lifetime, the one good thing that's coming out of it is that I believe at this point in my life that I'm teachable and I can be corrected, and I can also take that correction and repent. And I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It says, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thought that exalts itself against the love, will, and purpose of God. And to be obedient when your obedience is in readiness. I see a lot of people forget the last line. So I believe that at this point in my life, my obedience is in readiness. But the challenge is that I have to accept the fact that I do these behaviors that I have judged other people on my whole life. I do them. And if you study these scriptures and study yourself and realize what you're doing, it's a boomerang. Whatever you judge other people of, it'll come back on you. It's a boomerang. So in 2007, I traveled across the state to Harrisburg. There's a little town called Mechanicsburg, very close to Harrisburg. And my purpose was to go to a missionary school, and it was called the School of Supernatural Ministries. So I had to fill out an application before I went there. And I was already, this was when I was in my 60s. So I had a whole life behind me. I had 3 marriages and 3 divorces behind me. And when I wasn't divorced, I was dating, and things were going on in my life. So on the application, it had questions. The questions were, have you ever drank alcohol? Of course, I drank alcohol. I don't believe I was an alcoholic. I didn't get up and need it every day. But one time for 2 years, I was sad about a divorce, so I drank for 2 years straight every day. I drank beer from 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 a.m. And during those 2 years, I made a decision that I was going to do that. So I think an addiction is when you're not making the decision, you're helpless. But I made a decision that I was going to do that. So I did it. And at the end of the 2 years, I stopped because it was my decision. I was not helpless to the alcohol or the behavior or the consuming of it. So I stopped cold turkey. But it was my decision to start, and it was my decision to stop. But I'm just telling you this because a lifetime of waiting to be a missionary, it really hurt me really bad when I told the truth on the application and then they didn't accept me into their school. And they asked other questions. Have you ever done drugs? Yes, I had done drugs. I was experiencing my teenage rebellion in the 60s, and I had fun. And what was I going to say? No, I never did anything, or no, I didn't inhale. I didn't lie on the application. I told the truth. And then there was a question, have you ever had premarital sex or illicit sex or sex out of marriage? Probably that's what the question was. I said, yes. I lived a whole lifetime before I was writing up this application. But if I'm not mistaken, Jesus died on the cross for people that drank and people that had sex out of marriage and people that did drugs. Jesus died on the cross for that. So if I was in charge of that school, I would have said, my goodness, she's saved and set free, and wow, that happened to her before she got saved a long time ago. And then she did make mistakes after she was saved, but what does that mean? That means she's on a journey of sanctification, of being conformed to Christ. She's on a journey that takes time. And some things fall off right away and some things don't. So I've had to accept the fact that I'm not going to be a missionary. I wanted to be a missionary. So my calling is to learn about myself and all of these character flaws that I have, that I desire to have them be corrected. This is my calling. God spoke to me a long time ago. He told me that I was going to be able to help people with relationships. And I'm the worst person that he could call to do that. Because I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't be in relationships because I fail every time. I fail. And correcting myself is easy to correct myself when I'm alone. But then the test comes. I have to be tested on these things that I'm learning. So I have to be tested. I have to do life. I have to go out of my bedroom, out of my living room, out of my kitchen. I have to open the door on my apartment. I have to walk out in the hall and face down the other human beings that are in my building. I live in a high-rise with seniors, and thank God there's only 3 floors, and there's only 48 people. I have to deal with this. And I'm really not dealing with them. I'm dealing with me. The crazy thing is, it doesn't matter what they say or do. I have to come back in and talk to my friend, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, and the Father. And when I recognize what I've accomplished or what I've failed at, then I get scared. I get scared about the angry outbursts. Now, I'm not having them a lot. Usually I can go for 6 months or a year without having an outburst. And it used to be that the outbursts were words that I didn't know I was going to say. But now I've trained myself to be assertive. And if I do stand up for myself, and if it comes out in the middle of an outburst, it's assertive. I don't accuse other people of being wrong. I've tempered it down to learn how to speak to people. But even though in this assertiveness way of doing it, there's a part of it that's wrong, and it's my defensiveness. And so my defensiveness is rooted in the area where there's that sentence, I did all these things for you. Why can't you do this one thing for me? It's like people owe something to me because I have pushed myself really hard to be a well-accepted person. I pushed myself to do things for other people. I've been a caregiver in every relationship I was ever in. I've defended the underdog. I've pushed really hard in group situations that I would do things that the group needed, and I could do them in the background and not be given any credit for it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. There's like a journey that I'm on that has nothing to do with the other people because it started out that way. My journey was always in the secret place, in the hiding place where I hid, away from the terror and away from the trauma and away from the people. And God is shining the light on me now on little things that are things that I can handle. I can handle it now. And even though I'm handling it, it's kind of unwinding and coming to the surface, and I realize I'm still hurt. I'm very hurt. I'm a hurt person. I got hurt. So you're supposed to forgive, and then you also are supposed to apologize. Now that's another thing that's happening now. I have to be the one to apologize. Now why is that? Why is that the people that are around me are hurting me in that old wound, but I still have to apologize to them? Why is that? I don't know the answer to that, but I was counseled by my pastor recently. He was shining the light on my behavior, and that's good. I love it. I can accept his corrections very easily. But he added on that I had to go apologize to this person that I was holding an offense of, or I held an offense. Took offense. That's what this expression is. I took offense. He said, you have to apologize. Why? Why do I have to apologize? So I don't get that part. So that's going to be on the next video. See you later, alligator.